Now let's discuss that further with Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist joining us from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, welcome to the program. Hamas is offering a comprehensive prisoner exchange but insists it must include a full end to the war and Israeli withdrawal. Given Netanyahu's posture, do you see Israel engaging with this offer?
Well, it depends what you mean by Israel, doesn't it? Because what's happened is the far-right bloc in Israel are increasingly isolating itself, not just from the Arab world and from most of the Middle East, but also from the entire world, including their own so-called supporters here in Britain, in London, particularly with the members of the British Board of Deputies condemning their offensive too. But it's not really much of a collective effort, it seems to me. This is a tiny group of individuals who are fighting for their own political survival. Obviously, they're led right now by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has this support from the United States, which is possibly the only thing that's even keeping him in power right now. And if you think back to October the 7th, 2023, Netanyahu was in a position where his own citizens, his own nation, were trying to put him in prison for corruption and for fraud. And so at that point, that's when this very convenient attack happened from Gaza. Now, the obvious conclusion here is that this guy needs to get out of the way. He has no support amongst the global population generally, and even his own support in major countries which have been supporting him up till now, that support is starting to crumble. I think what's happening is he's becoming a very dangerous man, and of course he is still in charge of a nuclear arsenal in Tel Aviv, and so we're in quite a dangerous situation. Somebody has got to put this man in prison.
That's right. Mr. Gosling, you mentioned that the relationship between Netanyahu and his friends in other countries are somehow crumbling. Do you see that is happening with also Donald Trump? And also, do you see Donald Trump having either the will or leverage to pressure Israel into accepting another ceasefire?
Well, look, this is another question. The United States has been very supportive all the way through, actually more so than Great Britain. Which seems to be, it's almost as if they've divided this job up with the US deep state and Trump supporting Netanyahu, and the British deep state and Starmer supporting Zelensky in Ukraine. You know, if you could just put it like that, it just seems that that's what's been going on. But you know, actually, when you look back to Israel itself, they are doubling down on their war crimes. It seems to me they have no intention of admitting that anything that they've done is wrong, because this is something that they've painted themselves into a corner. The Israeli defense minister today is saying no humanitarian aid will enter Gaza, and the demands that they're coming up with, such as the Hamas and the Palestinians must give up their weapons. I mean, obviously, they're not going to do that. This is the sort of ridiculous demand that was made in Northern Ireland, for example, for the IRA to give up their weapons. You can't make that as a demand for a ceasefire. That's the sort of thing which maybe you can organise after you've had a ceasefire. But it seems to me quite obvious now to most of the world that Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire, because that ceasefire and the calm and the peace that comes with it could quite easily end his political career and end that for many of his friends may end up in prison. And so really this is just Netanyahu and a few of his friends causing a genocide just to preserve their own criminality. And so it's a criminal state, Israel, right now.
It is. Mr. Gosling, on a historical note, looking at Israel's track record from Oslo to recent broken truces, can any long-term or even short-term agreements with Tel Aviv ever be trusted?
Yes, because I think if you want to look historically, we came very close to a sensible peace agreement in Oslo, and that was scuppered by the Rabin assassination. And that was the Netanyahu faction that we're having to deal with today. Many of these people, of course, I don't know, it doesn't not talked about much here in the West, certainly not on the BBC, but they began their careers as terrorists. They were actually, I mean, for example, in the special forces. Now imagine if you choose the most ruthless fighters who will bend and break all the rules in your army. That is, I mean, Britain, it would be the SAS, maybe the Navy SEALs or something in the United States, the special forces, the off-book people who don't get any checks and balances, often from parliaments. They are sent to do dirty work. That is to say, black operations. If these are the people that then become your political leaders, then you can see why you might end up with a rogue state. And the most worrying thing about all of this, of course, is the nuclear arsenal, which is so little talked about, that people like Netanyahu still have. By the way, donated much of it by the Germans. You would wonder why, looking back on it, why the Germans would do such a thing to aid another Holocaust or to aid another genocide. An absolutely terrible thing for them to have done. And nobody seems to be stepping up, not even any of the major superpowers, to put Netanyahu and his far-right bloc friends, the fascists, back in the box.
Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol. Thank you for your time tonight.